Life is not about avoiding conflict. It's going to happen. We're going to have difference of opinion, beliefs. It's not about avoiding conflict. It's avoiding a necessary escalation of conflict. Knowing how to dance with it rather than fight with it, that's the secret to living a happier, healthier life.
Dana Garnett, conflict resolution strategist and founder of the Mindful Strategy.
When I was able to learn how to process through the deepest triggers, not just from my marriage and my divorce, but from my life, I started showing up differently. I also stopped judging anybody else in my life for having not done their own emotional work. If you don't clear all the stuff that you walk away with, that resentment, if you don't clear that stuff, that goes into the next relationship. And then you wonder, why does the same thing keep happening to me? Because you haven't adapted or you haven't discovered something that you might do differently, Not good or bad, right or wrong. It's just discovery. We're all life learners at the end of the day.
Today, we're diving into a topic we often try to avoid: conflict. Whether it's in the boardroom, the family group, WhatsApp chat, or the first few weeks of a new relationship, conflict is indeed part of life. And if you're ambitious, driven, and doing all the things, it's likely you're feeling the weight of it more than most. Joining me today is the incredible Dana Garnett, conflict resolution strategist and founder of the Mindful Strategy. Dana has helped resolve everything from business breakups to family feuds to high-stakes divorces and estate battles. And she does it all in a way that doesn't require everyone to even be in the same room. She's a former global executive, trained mediator and mindfulness teacher who's lived and worked across 6 continents. Today, Dana shares how conflict doesn't have to be destructive. In fact, it can be a doorway to emotional clarity, long-term well-being, and even deeper connection. We'll explore the kind of conflict that robs us of peace, success, and health, and also the kind that really shows up subtly in early dating, where the stakes feel high and vulnerability is raw. So whether you're walking into a tough meeting or walking into a second date, this episode will help you find your footing. Welcome, Dana. It's amazing to have you today.
Thank you, Lynda. I am so excited to be here.
And it's such a unique thing that you do, understanding conflict and dealing with it day in, day out. So let's dive straight in and get into it. What exactly is conflict, and in what ways does it typically show up for the women you work with?
Absolutely. Right off the bat, conflict, in the simplest form, I guess, to define it would be everything's going along just great. You're feeling great. Things are going in flow. And then suddenly something happens, right? Somebody says something, texts you, does something, something's triggered by a past memory, perhaps. And now you're conflicted, right? Maybe within yourself or with that other person. And now you've got an issue. And sometimes, you might be able to work through that very quickly. But if you can't and it starts to escalate, then it becomes a bigger issue and could even start to impact your relationships, your work life, your personal life, your mood swings, your sleep, your health, So conflict is normal, but that's pretty much how it starts. Now, I will add, and I always like to really stress this, is that life is not about avoiding conflict. It's going to happen. And humans interact. We're going to have difference of opinion, beliefs, different cultures we come from. It's not about avoiding conflict. It's avoiding a necessary escalation of conflict. And it's avoiding any conflict that's kind of like spinning under the radar for a long time in our life that starts to really eat away at our health and our well-being, because it's taxing our immune system, all that stress staying in our system that we kind of don't really realize is there. So there are some, to sum it up in the beginning, conflict is normal. Don't fear it. Don't try to avoid it. That's worse. Go with that flow. But knowing how to dance with it rather than fight with it, that's the secret to living a happier, healthier life.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's tackling it head on before you let it fester and build up and start creating stories in your head about what you think's happening versus what's actually happening. I'm sure you see a lot of that as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think something else, to be fair to ourselves as humans, we're not taught really how to manage it effectively in school or even in MBA programs, in our families, our social systems that we grew up in. We mimic what we see other people doing when they're in conflict. And maybe we get lucky and there's a very measured person in our life. It's a great mentor, a parent, whomever. And we learn from that, how to avoid the unnecessary, landmines, if you will, that don't have to happen. Most of us, though, probably grew up evidencing or witnessing people not handling conflict well. But again, it's not to blame them and not to blame ourselves. There's a great quote by Maya Angelou that I love, which is, everyone's doing the best they can with what they know at the time. If we knew better, we'd do better, right? So it's, this education, some call it social emotional intelligence skills. I did a deep dive into the neuroscience of conflict. That's how I came to understand how we're physiologically wired and why we respond the way we do to conflict. But that said, there's no innate teaching out there that we gain. And so I think if a lot more people understood how to work through it, it wouldn't fester, right? And we'd have a lot more harmony and, collaboration in the professional world as well as in our personal lives.
And what are some of the things that you found in your studies in neuroscience and how it shows up physiologically?
The effect of stress, I should say, on our nervous system causes a rise in cortisol. And let's say we have an angry confrontation with someone, right? We've had this big fight. Well, you may think it's over, because the fight's over, everything's resolved, right? But in your bodily system, that cortisol, that injection of cortisol can stay with us for a number of hours. I mean, if it's been a huge brawl, it might be 12 or 18 hours before that cortisol finally goes down, because we don't know how to reset ourselves in the moment, which is possible to do. And I can get to that later. But the problem with that is, if we are constantly in battle with someone or fighting with someone, that cortisol is just kind of still popping up. And it's, again, wearing on our immune system, our digestive system, our nervous system, everything. The other part to realize is, let's say it's not outbursts that are the issue, but maybe we're feeling depressed, or we're feeling just kind of like displaced or just lonely or not connected in some way. That's stress. That's cortisol just running, as I was saying earlier, under the radar. And the best analogy would be, it's like it's draining our energy and draining our bodily systems and our mental capacity to think straighter. That expression of stress, you can't think straight. When we are stressed, it's like it's a constant state of dis-ease, D-I-S-E-S. But if it stays too long, it becomes disease. If it's over too long a period of time, it can really make us sick. And that under the radar stress of depression or sadness, grief, and I'm not saying at all, there are no right or wrong, good or bad emotions. We want to feel everything in our life. This is not trying to feel positive all the time. That would drive everybody crazy. Yourself too. But no, we want to understand, why are we feeling that way? And be able to process through, which we are capable of doing physiologically, process that through really quickly and get us over to that energy renewal side. So again, it's not trying to fight off or withstand negative emotions. We just don't want that to become our emotional home, because that's what can make us sick over time.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like with other emotions of the heart and triggers, it's not a case of pushing it down. It's a case of looking at it and understanding why, being curious about why we're being triggered by this, right? and understanding why do we feel angry or sad or avoidance in this specific scenario or experience, and understanding where that comes from. It's normally a product of our experience or a trauma or something that we've dealt with before. But tell me a little bit more about dancing with conflict, because you've developed a unique approach to resolving conflict, and sometimes without needing everyone involved. So how does that work, and why has it been such a game changer?
That's a great question. And yes, I lived through my own life crisis. It was a really bad divorce. And when I came through it, because it was such a debilitating experience, including mediation, that just felt so bullying and vulnerable, that, long story short, in having conversations with someone, it simply said, I wanted to serve in a way that could help people not suffer like I did. And long story short, I became a mediator as a result, because they were like, well, become a mediator, do it better. So I went on this journey and got a master's degree in dispute resolution and studied it. But very early on, I came across the study of neuroscience and conflict. And that's how I learned about the physiological effect of stress and all of that. And meanwhile, as I began mediating court cases, divorce cases, civil cases, business breakups, marriage breakups, whatnot, I kept seeing in mediation that while it has its effect and its purpose, that you can only really get to settlement, and everyone walks away. I don't know exactly how it works in the UK. And I will say, in the States, we've got, in Texas is different than California, than New Jersey, than North Carolina. Every state has a little variation on what mediation is, how long it lasts. In Texas, you get a day. Pretty much. That's it. California, maybe 2 years. But, again, the service varies. But so as a mediator, particularly me, I'm trained to come in quickly and try to guide a process, not give advice, but guide a process so the parties in conflict can actually come to their own resolution or their own settlement. But when you walk away with settlement, and where I work, settlement is a legally binding contract. It's a mediated settlement agreement. It gets attached to the civil's case or the divorce decree or whatever, and it's binding. Most people walk away going, "Oh, I didn't quite get what I wanted," or I'm still angry, I'm still resentful, and I just saw that over and over. Meanwhile, I was working with the family business advisor, and I started doing some conflict resolution coaching, and he was farming me some clients that he wasn't able to take on because he was on a second book tour. And so I started working with these individuals that were coming to him and now me saying, no one gets it but me. I'm the only one that sees there's a problem. And if we don't fix this, we're going to lose our biggest client, or we're going to lose these assets, or we're going to have to shut down the business, really back against the wall, dire needs situations. And I started working with them in the way in which I had found recovery for myself. And what I had discovered was when I was able to learn how to process through the deepest triggers, not just from my marriage and my divorce, but from my life, I started showing up differently. And I also stopped judging anybody else in my life for having not done their own emotional work. Because we cannot control it. Anybody does, right? We can only control our response to it. Just like they can't control us, right? So from my own experience, I began working with these family business clients, many women, and within a month or two, was able to help them clear some really deep triggers. And interestingly, in family businesses, what often happens is, let's say the head of the family passes away and then someone's made president and everybody starts fighting about who that president is and all this. And sometimes when people pass, we actually still have conflict with them that we hadn't cleared. But there's a way to clear that too within ourselves and actually be free of that. And what it does, it puts you on a whole new path of how you show up in every relationship. And that's kind of how it started. But the fact is, even though it takes two or more to tango, it really does only take just one person to shift the dynamics of the situation. And that the other people involved like when I was coaching these family business owners, since then, many business owners and coaching people through divorce and helping in so many situations, that they end up they learn this for themselves. And over the time, just watching them show up differently has given them so much freedom. Oh, and what I was going to say is the others that they're in conflict with, that they came to me for, they don't know that they got help, and it's okay. If they want to share that, they can. All the work I do with my clients is confidential, but I never meet the other people. I don't meet the parents or the siblings or the other business partner or the to-be ex-spouse in the situation. I'm just coaching that one person on how to show up. And it's really effective, And the last thing I'll tag on is it's not just about helping them clear the immediate problem. I could do that and then walk away. And I used to kind of do that. Really, I wasn't really coaching beyond that or training and imparting these skills. But what I do more today is not just help intervene with whatever this urgent situation is. As we're doing this, I'm teaching them these skills so they become more second nature. Going to the dancing with conflict, you can learn how to dance with conflict only after you practice enough times, and it doesn't take forever. A month or two of working with this, right? And you start to respond differently and you start to see the results. And it's like, again, now you're not fearing conflict. One of my big mantras is happiness is not getting to a place in life where everything's okay. Nothing to worry about. There's always that thing, that person. No, happiness is knowing that whatever life throws us, we can handle it. And that's kind of what I talk about with dancing with conflict.
Yeah. And the tools that you give your clients, I'm guessing that there's a couple of things with it. You are asking the right questioning to open their map of the world and understanding their triggers, number one. And then number two, providing them with communication tools to go out there and communicate through the conflict and asking the questioning to the other side to help them potentially open their map of the world as well.
To an extent, yes. Actually, it's because the way I work with people is coming from a mediation perspective. There is some element of asking them questions and whatnot, but in the actual conflict resolution coaching I do, what it's evolved to is I literally just start with what's the one thing that could be completely resolved for you, whether it's your personal life, your professional life, whatever it is. What's that one thing? And most everybody knows. So I know, right? And then we'd dive into, okay, what are some very specific examples of that? And it's hard sometimes for people to go from the storytelling big picture of, well, this happened and this happened. This always seems to happen. They keep doing this. It's like really narrow it down to a very specific example, because that speaks to our neural pathways, all that ingrained memory, right? And so we process around that specific trigger. And when I say, what's an example? I have hundreds. It just takes one. It's just to process one trigger. And through that processing, rather than send them out to have questions for other people, it's really constructing a conversation differently, that when you show up at that other person, you're communicating, yes, differently, but because it's coming from the processing work you've done for yourself around it. And when you show up that way, you're 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a neutralized response from the other person because you're showing up differently. And there's a very specific word choice and a very specific delivery of that word choice, and as to whether or not that's going to go as smoothly as possible. It's not that complex once you do this, but that's how I help people, because we're all bouncing off of our neurological responses to each other, and this is a way to help neutralize their fight, flight, freeze mechanism, the amygdala and all that, to where you not only have helped, or reached to them, connected with them in a way that kind of neutralizes their response. Now it leaves it open for you to present your side from a more neutral place. That now the next question is, okay, great. How do we go forward? What do you think is a good way for us to proceed? This could be with somebody you were embattled with, but now it's a smoother situation. And this thing is like, and this is how it works. Head to head, when someone shows up with a different approach that actually neutralizes the situation, there's nothing else for this person to hit against. And therein lies the secret, if you will.
Yeah. And do you have any specific stories about a client that really transform their relationship with conflict and what changed for them personally or professionally as a result?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the one that comes immediately to mind as a woman who was working in an organization, and she was over a department, a department head, and very toxic environment, to the extent that she left and decided, she loved it, did not want to have to leave, but because of her colleagues that she was working alongside, particularly more colleagues, but not the reporting relationship, vertically, but more horizontally. She went off and started her own business, but always, missed this. Well, a few years later, a couple of years actually, the organization reached out to say, hey, would you like to come back? We have this new position we've created to be perfect for on the leadership team. And she at first said, I'd love to, but I really think I'm better what I'm doing now, but thank you. And immediately she felt this regret, and she knew me and ended up reaching out. She's, because she said, this is what I really want to do, but the same people are still there that I had bumped heads with before. And so we did the work, and, again, a couple of months with her. But pretty immediately she discovered that the issues she felt she was having with these colleagues, and something had blown up. I mean, she had been she felt ostracized and very publicly admonished at one point in her job there. That was very traumatic for her. But when we did the work, she found out it wasn't so much about those people. It's how she'd been showing up in relationships at work and with her husband, and even as, growing up as a child from her family experiences. Now, this is a very good point for me to pause and say, this work is not therapy. I'm on purpose not a therapist, and I'm on purpose not a lawyer. I'm mediation, conflict resolution. But the reason it's not therapy particularly is we don't start with, well, tell me what it was like growing up, right? Or tell me how you felt about this. And, therapy has its place too. And I've been a recipient of that. But it can go on for quite some time, and you may never actually get to complete, closure and resolution. So when she did this work, she had these pretty quick discoveries about herself, constructed a conversation to have with these colleagues, if and when she took the job, sat with it. She went back. She took the job. She's been there, I think now 3 years. She's just started into her third year. Loves it. And she's told everyone she knows, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't discovered for myself what I needed to know. And once again, just working with her. And she, no one may ever know that unless she shares it, that, she got this help. But it's just, and it's very rewarding to see someone be able to go do what they want to do because they're not avoiding the situation, because, again, they're avoiding the conflict, which drains on you. That dis-ease can really, become disease down the road, and you don't want that.
And what was the conflict specifically in that instance? Was it the way that other people were communicating with her? Was it a toxic environment which she went in and said, this is not what I'm dealing with anymore? This is how you make me feel when this happens?
Yes, she did approach a particular person in the situation. She was up for a promotion, and she felt she was led to believe it was going to be hers. And not underhandedly, but just like she had new mentors and the votes. When she got into the circle of the situation of the interview, the group interview, a person came right out and said something that completely threw her. It was something that had been a side conversation they'd had that was kind of negative. And so she felt, just kind of in that moment attacked maybe or whatever. She just felt like, what is this? And from that point, the interview went just downhill. And so she left feeling completely, sideswiped, and ended up finding out that it did not go to her, it went to somebody else. And then so she's like, well, to stay on and to continue was just too much for her to deal with. And so that's why she left. But again, in really facing, or not so much facing, but discovering for herself that she really wanted to do this work. She loved it. Just if it weren't for these people, like I said, there's always going to be something or somebody. But to keep that from what you want to do is sad. And so, yeah, she was able to go back and she deals daily with these people still as part of the leadership team.
With the same people who triggered her before.
Yes, but the triggers aren't there anymore. You don't, it's not like you don't forget, but you're not triggered because you've cleared those neural pathways have been cleared.
Right. So it's more of an internal resolution in this situation where she cleared the internal triggers. So whatever they would say to her, it would be like water off a duck's back. Yeah. Because I guess some instances, if she were to be in a very toxic environment where they were more or less, I don't mean to say verbally abusive, but abusive in the corporate world through manipulation and other forms, I guess that would be about speaking up for herself and communicating why that is an issue for her, and the what problems occur when that toxic communication does happen.
Yeah, right. In fact, the person that she had the initial concerns with was her boss, and she was going to be on a higher level on that team. But to your point, it's not always just something you discover within yourself. Sometimes when we're in a situation where we need to continue in that position or that work life for the moment, we have to interact with people, and there's one young woman that came to me recently. I say young as in late 20s, and she is having an issue with a new boss. She was reporting to one person that was just very easy to work with, and now this new person has come in, and the new person is between the person she used to work with and her. And she's struggling for this last year. And, like, no matter what she does, the new boss just finds fault with it and makes public statements in meetings, and she's just feeling so discouraged. So as we speak, we're working through that conversation. I'm coaching her on how to have a conversation, and it's her idea to have a conversation with the two women, her former boss and then her current boss, at the same time. And so we process around what's going on perhaps with each of those people. Maybe it's just one person you're talking with, or the person you're talking with. This is a planned conversation where she's going in to try to resolve things with them together. However, day in and day out, we've got interactions with people all the time, and what this process is also great for is when you process something for yourself, it's great because when you are now in those impromptu situations and you're met head on with somebody coming at you with some kind of dig or a slight or whatever, whether it's public or private, you're more prepared to respond. And the secret to responding in the way that gets the best outcome is to put them first in your response, like responding to maybe a need they have. Some people say to me, "What? This person causes me so much misery. Why would I do that?" But the trick is when we reach out to somebody, especially someone we're having issues with, first, like I said, it helps in a certain way. It neutralizes that situation so that we can share our side of it. And what I try to teach is that while it may seem counterintuitive to care enough about someone else who's been driving us mad, to open up first about them. And this is not some weird therapy way to do this. It's like a clinical way. It's just casual conversation, but it's very planned, if you will, and flows enough to where you can kind of on the fly, adjust it to whatever they come back with. But my point is when we put ourselves in somebody else's shoes first, ultimately that is self-preservation. Because if we approach somebody with what we need first, they get defensive and they won't, like, hey, you know what you said really upset me. What you said at the meeting yesterday really upset me. And I just want to tell you that I don't know how this is going to stop, but I just, can we talk about this? What do you mean? Can we talk about this? I upset you? Are you kidding me? You see, it's like already, instead of, hey, when you said what you did yesterday during the meeting, I'm wondering if you were just feeling stressed because we're not where we need to be on this project yet. And you need progress and you're not getting those deliverables. Would that be right? Pause, let them respond. You're either going to get one of three things. Yes, no, or kind of, sort of. But now you've got new information to work with. So, okay, great. Thanks for letting me know that. At the same time, I've been feeling really stressed as well. And a bit awkward to even approach you because I've been struggling with this piece of it. And to be honest, I've also got something happening in my personal life that's been a distraction, which I know hasn't helped. But I just wonder if, what do you think could be a way that we could get this back on track? And any ideas you have? And I mean, I have some too, but I'd like to hear maybe what you think. So you see how it's making this about them, and the secret to being able to do this is to remove any judgment, opinion, or assumption about what you think they should be thinking, feeling, doing, right? And that comes from the processing. And then you have this more smooth, now you're dancing with it, right? And and that is going to keep the cortisol down for everybody, especially you. And, so their shoes first is your self-preservation every time.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense because the person who has communicated in a stressful way, in an angry way, in a very knee-jerk reaction way, they're the ones that have clearly got some kind of issue. And you're opening up the conversation going, hey, when this happened yesterday, I'm kind of worried about you, or is there something going on here? And it's like just opening it up for them. And then you're counteracting that by saying, yeah, I'm feeling this way as well. How can we solve this problem, or how can we come together for it to create a solution? So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I will say it's as much as I'd love to say it's a cure all, every single time you're going to get the greatest result, there may be more difficult people out there, but I will say if you have tried this, are you trying to connect differently, right? And it's just not working. We all have a choice at some point as to what do we do about that, bigger picture in our life. However, while it may not be a cure all, it's a cure most often, and people get a result that shifts those dynamics. So it takes the emotional charge out of things and you can actually, you're now on a new path.
Yeah. And it does take some courage and confidence and bravery to have this new approach to dealing with conflict. Because if someone has been communicating in an angry or aggressive way, and then, you've got these tools up your sleeve and you're going to go and try them out, it can be a bit, hearts racing. Are they going to kick off again?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's actually natural and human and okay. It's interesting you said that because as a side thing in my life, I coach in the performing arts because I had a performing arts career for a while in early days. And I still coach once a year with some students getting ready for college auditions and things. And I teach that when we're nervous about something, it's a good thing because I don't want to be nervous. It's like if you're nervous about presenting, whether it's to the board of directors or you're giving, a speech at a wedding or auditioning, whatever it is, our body needs that nervous energy to be ready on task. And rather than think about or focus on, oh my God, I'm about to have this conversation, you focus on what you know, your preparation. So when you've prepared for these conversations through having processed through things for yourself and what you're guessing with what may be going on with the other person, that's part of the construction of the conversation, then the nerves may kick in, but it's easy to go from feeling nervous to, all right, I'm going to start by saying this, and just see go with the flow. Whatever it is, I know I can, come back with this or respond with this. And to your point, gives you more courage and more confidence to have that conversation because you're prepared. And the more you do this, the more you can do this on the fly. It doesn't require every time going, just 1 second, you've upset me. I'll be back. I'm going to go process this. I'll see you tomorrow. It's like, I'll see you in an hour. We don't have that luxury sometimes. So this is a way to have it, be able to do this in the moment. And that's why I like working with people long enough to coach them so that it becomes second nature. It's rewriting habits and those neural pathways and the learning.
Yeah, it is. It's like confidence. We're not born with confidence. It's a muscle that needs pumping and squeezing to grow. And it's the same with approaching new ways to dealing with conflict and communication. So moving on more to, we've talked about the work area. Let's talk about relationships, but first of all, friendships, because actually Mel Robbins had a great podcast a few weeks ago on adult friendships, and I'd love to just dive into this briefly. But friendships tend to become a bit harder as adults. Friendships, relationships between family members, and conflicts seem to arise more frequently than our younger years, whether that's our changes in values and morals and visions and what we want in our life. And have you seen this show up in your work? And how have you advised folks navigate conflict in friendships?
Absolutely. Another example would be someone who came to me who they were friends, but they were working on a special project together. And they hadn't spent as much time together in this collaborative way. And the more time they spent together, some of it was traveling, sharing the same room, stuff showed up that wasn't there before. And they'd been friends for years. And it was threatening the project they're working on. Same thing, process through it, got some ahas from it, showed up differently in that relationship, which smoothed things out. And the other person wasn't involved in trying to clear that up, and they didn't even know, perhaps, again, whether somebody shares that they got the help or not, I don't know, but it actually smoothed things up for them. I'll give my own example in my own life. Childhood friend that I just adore to this day, and grew up through high school, went our separate ways, but stayed in touch. Those friendships where you may not see each other for years, but when you get back together, it just picks right up where you left off. And we both went through really bad divorces. In fact, she was ahead of me getting a bad divorce, sadly. Gave me great advice, as so many people do when you're going through something, right? It's well-meaning, but it may not be that helpful, right? Because you're coming at it from their opinion and their perspective, But anyway, I got through my divorce, and because on my own path, I got to this new fork in the road. I can keep spinning in it, or I can go a new way, which I chose to do, which not only was great for me, for my health and well-being, but my daughters. Just a side note, when we're in conflict with people, whether it's friends, business, personal, be thinking about the knock-on effect that it has on innocent bystanders, right, to the conflict. So anyway, my dear friend was still 20 years on, very traumatized by her divorce. And the more I discovered about my own self and helping others, I approached her every now and then to say, hey, can I help with that? And sometimes, mediators will say, don't ever try to mediate your family because, or even your friends, because, and not because you're, even if you think you're the greatest negotiator or the greatest, heartfelt, understanding person, right? And you're so objective, so you think, while you may feel that way, they can't see us as objective, right? There's too much history there. And so even when you're a professional at this, I did offer to see another, been members of my family, by the way, that have asked me, my mom all the time. She calls me her communication guru. I know it sounds silly, but she has little run-ins with some people from time to time, just natural stuff, and she's getting the hang of it, and it's really, it's fun to work with her. But anyway, that's a side thing. But this friend of mine just didn't want the help, which was fine. So I let don't push that, but still wanted to get together. And but over the years, it just finally just, I don't see her anymore, because I would call her on her birthday, and I felt like at some point, even though she's a dear, dear friend, I had to come to terms with myself that trying to keep this going was perhaps putting too much pressure on her, or maybe I'm not respecting her saying, look, I'm good. I wasn't trying to still help fix her, right, at all. But I could tell she needed space. And so it's been a loss in my life, because I still feel very dear about her. But that's been a situation I've experienced, that it doesn't always work out with friends. I have coached other people with like roommate situations, roommate as an either just friends, or you're living with somebody. You're not married yet, but you're living with somebody. And all the things we talked about earlier, how to show up, how to process it, all those things that we said in professional world apply with any situation. And the beauty about this neuroscience way to go about it, if you will, is that it cuts through personality, political, religious, age, social differences. It's there are like a number of personality tests we can take out there. I often get this question: can you even deal with narcissists? It's like, yeah, you can. I have. It's like, and I've coached others on how to. But the thing is, personality tests, and I've taken a number of them. When I used to work for the Coca-Cola company, internationally, and corporate, introduce all these,
There's so many personality tests out there. I lose track these days.
I know, right? Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, DISC, whatever. They have their place, and they're very helpful in organizational consulting, and just to kind of know about yourself. But the challenge, I will say, and this may ruffle some feathers, but personality tests have nothing to do with conflict resolution. Knowing what your personality is, or what Enneagram says someone else's personality is, the challenge with that is we've first got to learn what that means. What are all the pros and cons to my person? And then now I got to figure out everybody else's, and I'm trying to remember, how do I respond to you, Lynda? Because you're a this and I'm a that, and it's exhausting,
That is a problem.
It is, and people don't want to be labeled sometimes, so when there's conflict, it's just one more thing to put on there. So I don't diss them. I think they have their worth and value. But when it comes to getting to the heart of something, that's why I say this approach, it's tapping into how we're physiologically wired. And that's despite any personality or any belief we may have or culture we come from, whatever the differences. So I don't know if that's helpful, whether it's friends or romantic relationships or what have you.
If you love PS I Love Me and want to dive in deeper, then join the Evolve Woman, my 8-week online coaching program, which will take you on a transformative journey of self-discovery, fulfillment, and to find the joy and love you so deserve. Check out my Instagram, Lynda Williams Coach, to find out more.
It's approaching it in the same way, and you're right. You need quite a simple, effective formula that you have up your sleeve to deal with any situation, whether it's your work environment, you're running a business, and your friendships. As we're saying, friendships evolve, whether that's you've evolved and they haven't on some level, whether it's a change in values and morals. The conflict could be anything from, those topics and more.
I love how you articulate that. It's so true. Yeah.
And then rolling into relationships, because as high achieving women out there, female business owners, high achievers, entrepreneurs, they're used to being quite in their masculine energy, their strategic communications at work, slay another day, very much in control. And then when it comes to the early stages of dating and relationships for this specific niche, do you see there being more conflict than other women because they're used to being in control?
I would say yes. I mean, because when you're in control, and when you're at a certain position in a company, let's say, and you manage a team, there's an understanding that you're the boss, right? And presuming you're reasonable and fair and all these things, you're still the boss, right? But when you get into a relationship, so let's say a new dating relationship, trying to, figure each other out and, how are we connecting and all that. It's this, right? When you're a boss, it's this. But when you're dating or get more involved with someone, it's this. And it's give take. And depending on how this other person is experiencing, maybe they're also a boss. So it's like, now we're like doing this. And who's got control? But it's, I think in that situation for women particularly, I'll at some point I do take off my objective mediator, hat, if you will, our conflict resolution coaching hat, and put on some advising hats. What I would say to that is, don't lose sight of what matters most to you, with or without this person in your life. And the minute you start to feel a twinge, check in with yourself. Is this about me? Or is it something that keeps coming up when they do or say something, right? And it's making you feel uncomfortable? And be very careful, because my own experience with this, of the slippery slope of what I call, well, a lot of people call codependence, that seeking that external that approval, for your external, seeking an external approval for your happiness, right? Rather than being internally happy, right? I know.
I just read a post on LinkedIn about that. Today, actually, on how a lot of the research proves it, a lot of high achieving women, their self-worth is built on external validation, growing their business, multi-million-dollar revenue streams, awards, yada, 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 instead of the internal validation, I am worthy as is.
Absolutely. No. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure in the great work that you do, you come across this quite a bit. And I to add to that would be just, in personal relationships, actually in any relationship, but personal in this case, keeping in focus your why. What are your most important needs? Is it, if it is for power in your world, which is not a bad thing, you want progress, success, not bad things, but do you also have underlying needs of integrity, right? To be seen for who you are, appreciation, respect, and keep in touch with what those internal needs are, emotional needs for you. And last thing I'll say is, in any relationship, a personal relationship especially, make sure that person's worthy of you, right? Make sure, yes, because if they are not, you will start adjusting for them to keep it going. And when you start to do that, your need for self-esteem, self-worth, self-love is going to start to be chipped away, and you'll become more unhappy, and then it slips into, after all I've done, they still treat me this way, right? Or, no matter what I do, what I say, they're still not happy. And that's codependence. Because we've lost sight of our need for self-esteem.
Yeah, and people get into this peacekeeper mode, right? They, the codependency, the people pleasing, putting their needs at the bottom of the to-do list, really, as you were saying, really quashing down their worth, their needs, their values. And by keeping the peace, that's almost an internal conflict in itself.
Yes, it is internal. Well said.
Without even knowing it, this machine subconsciously going on in there, and pretty much unaware of this internal conflict because your needs aren't being met, values aren't aligned, you're not okay with the behavior and the way they're acting, but you want to find a great relationship, you want to keep the peace, yada yada yada, and again your self-worth, and it just demises over time.
That is so true. So again, well said. Absolutely. Yeah. And the woman I described who was at the organization left and went back, there was something within herself that just kept triggering others in a way that she didn't even realize. She kept saying, I've done this, I've done that. How can they do this to me? Right. But she didn't have that internal realization. There was nothing wrong about what she was doing. She just didn't know what was showing up. And that's one other thing to add to this is when you discover, like for myself, 20 years of marriage, and in a flash, it's up in flames. When you and then the divorce, the way we handled our divorce, neither of us knew how to go about it, but it was brutal. It was expensive and brutal, unnecessarily, and our daughters suffered through it. And when the good news is, having done the studies I've done, and when I did it, processing stuff for myself, I was really clear of my divorce after just 18 months after the decree was filed. I was over it. And I'd met so many women, like I described, before, who still, are over it. There's that divorce continuum or conflict continuum. You're just getting on it. You're either just starting it and embroiled in the middle of it, or it's legally over, but you're not over it. And so when I was able to discover how to get really over it, that's how I knew how to show up differently. And immediately our daughters started, the stress for them. But the point to all of this is that when you come to that realization, I had a split-second moment of feeling really guilty about how I had treated my children, or how I had shown up in my marriage, how I had shown up in the divorce, right? But the thing is, Maya Angelou, come to the rescue. We all do the best we can with what we know at the time. So don't be hard on yourself. Yeah, but step into your truth, into your why, as to what do you want in life? What are like you said, your values that you hold dear, and live by those, not external means.
Yeah. I feel like everyone needs you when they're going through a divorce, because the only people who are winning going through the divorce courts are the lawyers. They actually love conflict because they're making more money. Oh, let's have a few more rounds, shall we? Let's get a few more tens of thousands of dollars in the bank account before this is settled. Because if you don't have this framework and approach to conflict going through a divorce, the lawyers are winning. Anyone involved is being emotionally bruised by it all if you don't know how to navigate it. Members of the family on both sides, the children and everything else. So it's, everyone needs a bit of Dana Garnett going through a divorce.
Well, I tell you, it's, and that is something that's similar between our two countries, is that lawyers do tend to operate, similarly. However, I will say, well, when I tell people I'm on purpose not an attorney, they get relieved because they're like, okay, good. But they also come to me saying, we don't want an attorney. We don't want to spend money on an attorney because we know we've heard all the horrible things. The trick with that is, especially if you're whether it's a business breakup or a marriage breakup, you need legal advice. And until you get the clarity around your legal options, you stay emotionally stuck. And so I tell people, get a lawyer. However, You want someone who wants to help you get this resolved as soon as possible, not keep it charged for the fees, right? Which happens. And as so many reformed attorneys, I like to call them, tell me that this is, I mean, one of my great mentors, said he became a mediator for all the sins he committed as a litigation, family lawyer. All the suffering that caused.
Yeah, it's not just the money, it's the emotional suffering.
Yeah. But you need that advice. So I've got a list of people I refer, like within the counties, that I live within, or people live within. I've got a list of attorneys I know I can send them to that I trust are going to support them. Also, if someone's needing an attorney, a business attorney or a divorce attorney in their jurisdiction, if it's going to court or if it's filed in the courts, if it's not filed in the courts, I can, a lot of people I can send people to for legal advice. But if it is, I actually can coach them, and I often do. We'll get on a Zoom call, and I'll coach them on finding their own attorney that's really the right fit, and make a phone call, and they're on speaker, and they're in the background hearing while I'm talking to the law office and saying, hey, I've got a client here. They need legal advice, blah, blah, blah. This is, summary of the case. Tell me, what do you do? How do you approach this? And pretty quickly, there's a vibe. You can sense what a good attorney match might be for that person, because and people that are already with an attorney that they don't like, perhaps, or it's not going well, but they're stuck in the middle of, and changing attorneys now is impossible. They just want to get done with this. I coach people how to show up with their attorney. We'll process around the contract and come up with a conversation to have with your attorney, because your attorney's just trying to help you help you as best they can. So I want to help them help their attorney, right? And attorneys a lot of them don't really enjoy the conflict. They just don't want, yes, some try to keep it exacerbated, but it's stressful for them too. And they're not trained, and they're not supposed to be trained in getting to the heart of the emotional stuff, So you're absolutely right about, that, and just to add that.
And from everything that you've seen, what do most people just get really wrong about dealing with conflicts, especially in really emotionally charged situations, like when you're in a relationship or a family member?
Absolutely. Judgment. It's easy to judge or think, assuming, or having an opinion about why you think they're behaving the way they're behaving. Saying what they're saying it's a challenge at first, but once you start letting go of judgment and staying more curious, like, what's going on with this person? I wonder, and you don't always have to say that. What's going on with you? Because that may piss them off, right? Especially if they're really upset. But again, choose the moment. You learn how to choose the moment, choose the word choice, the order, and all that. But stay curious as to, and when you say curious, you have greater insights, and you might decide to say something different in that moment, or not at all. That person might just need space, and it might be okay. It might be the best thing to say is, I'm just wondering if you need some time with this, or would it be help if we just park this right now? Or, if I got out of here and, yes, please, it's like just guessing that, even like, well, would it possibly be help? And we speak, another thing we get wrong is we don't know better, is the word choice around, I know how you feel. No one knows how we feel, right? Right? Is that, no, you do not.
We know how they feel.
Exactly. There's the assumption. Instead of that, it's like, I'm wondering if you're feeling, right? Or maybe you're feeling this or this. I don't know, but what can I do to help? Or maybe what I just said is something that, I shouldn't. And, apologies are great. Sometimes we don't sometimes apologize when we should, because we're still upset ourselves and judging. But yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Throwing in judgment, not being curious, assuming we know what somebody's feeling, and trying to, even if we think are being helpful, saying that emphatically, as opposed to using if words like I sense, I imagine, I wonder, I guess. Keep it, I don't know, because
keep it
that's
open and light and curious. And I think from my own experience, when I didn't used to deal with conflict in the best way, because I took it personally, I used to take everything personally. And then I eventually came to the conclusion many years ago that it's not me. It's something going on in their world. And 9 times out of the 10, we always think, oh, I've done something wrong, or they don't love me, or yada, yada, yada. And it's quite often not the case. It's just something going on in the background that we're unaware of.
absolutely correct. Yes. It's 9 times out of 10, it's not you. Well, when you're in a place of awareness, 9 times out of 10, it's not you. You may still need some awareness around what you're doing that's causing this thing to repeat, and there's that great adage, if someone keeps saying the same thing over and over again to you, like, you don't get it. What I said was this, but no, you're not hearing me. When they're saying that, they don't feel heard. And there's something that we need to change not within ourselves, but in our approach to get past that. Otherwise, the cortisol is going to keep spinning, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to resolve.
Yeah. And when it comes to, in the moment, when you don't have, for our listeners, a quick tip here, when they haven't seen you, they haven't got the conflict resolution strategy. And then if someone's hijacked, they feel a bit stabbed in the heart, they feel, whether that's in a meeting or on a date, what's one immediate thing they can do to stay calm and stay grounded?
Absolutely. I'd say 3 things. 1, just remember you're doing the best you can. All right. And in that moment, like, just, even if you're feeling hijacked, it's a natural reaction. So not to I shouldn't be feeling hijacked. It's okay. If that's what's happening, or when that happens. The second thing is to literally take what's called a heart-focused breath. Focusing your attention on your heart and breathing in and out, slower and deeper than you would normally. Now, this is not to mean in that hijack moment, just 1 second, I've got to do my heart-focused breathing, and then come back, right? Practice this, just literally like you breathing in ease instantly, or breathing in a feeling of appreciation or gratitude for something in your life. And when you know what that feels like, right, and being able to take that heart-focused breath, literally the cortisol starts to drop. Okay. And what rises is that vitality hormone called dehydroepiandrosterone, or better known as DHEA, and it starts coming up. And now in that moment, literally physiologically, our bodily systems are more in alignment. And when that happens, and that's just a heart-focused breath is all that takes to get that instant alignment or realignment, we reset our nervous system. And now we're able to access our higher intelligence. We've lowered the stress. Right now we can think straighter. And so in that moment, you're like feeling stressed, overwhelmed, hijacked. Take a heart-focused breath, and nobody even knows what you're doing because we often breathe deeply anyway. And from that, and in that moment, ask yourself, what would be the most effective, or the path of least resistant, most effective, not to throw more fuel in this, thing to do, say, not do, not say, seek help, not seek help, whatever it is, in that moment. So it's like you're met with this situation, or it's in this heated argument, heart-focused breath, and from there, just like, it gives you a pause. And now you can actually access your higher intelligence. And we are incredibly intuitive beings. And when we're aligned this way, we often get insights, and we're not looking for some complex answer. This is like literally just,
because you got a few seconds, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And it's okay to just take that pause and just not say anything for a second. If so, is it, well, aren't you going to say something? I'm thinking. It's like, it's okay to say, I will. Yeah. I wonder if, now it's like, it's like giving yourself that break. So if that's helpful, that's.
I think, number one, what you're saying is you're doing the best you can, and approach this with care. care for yourself. Number 2, breath work. I'm a massive fan of breath work. Taking a deep breath in, a heart-centered breath in, to really calm your nervous system down and balance those emotions out. And then you can access your higher intelligence and intuition to come up with whether it's a short-term solution or something helpful to say or not to say in that moment.
Yeah. And, for business women in business who are running major organizations or whatever your role is, taking that heart-focused breath, even when you've got something among your team, something's not right with the team, or you're trying to manage something. Taking that heart-focused breath also gives you that pause and access to a higher mental state to make a better decision, or a high stakes. There's so much pressure on leaders to make high stake, high emotion decisions. And when you come at these from a different place, or a place of alignment, physiological alignment, you're going to make clearer, better decisions with less regret.
Yeah. And making it even as basic, take a breath, think straight. Those typical things that we know, and you're backing it up with your neuroscience and everything else, but it's kind of common sense as well when you think about it. Taking a breath to think straight.
Exactly. It's not, doesn't have to be, nor is it meant to be complicated. There's a lot of neuroscience behind. It's not rocket science. It's neuroscience. It's still complicated to just the whys, but the doing of it, pretty straightforward. And that's another one of my big mantras is less is more.
Yeah. Keep it simple. And you have to keep it simple when you're in high stakes and conflict. You have to be able to act in the moment quite often in a calm and helpful way.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, I love what you do, Dana. I think this has been such a fascinating conversation to really help people navigate conflict, both personally and professionally. And what you're working on at the moment, what's next for you?
Oh, goodness. I've just come off of 2 speaking engagements. Well, interestingly, one was for it's a global conference for the Risk and Insurance Management Society's Risk World that was held in Chicago. Yeah. And I was invited to co-present with a woman who's been in the risk industry for decades. And she's just a mover and a shaker. And our talk was on risk management or strategic risk management and the neuroscience of conflict. And everything I kept hearing at this conference was about loss prevention. And that's what conflict resolution is about, right? Loss prevention. And she and I are now going forward with further collaboration, maybe doing some trainings and with some organizations and other presentations to get this notion of conflict resolution from a perspective of social emotional intelligence skills, out there more and more. But it was a great experience. And I'm also, I even work with professional advisors, whether they're attorneys, financial advisors, trustees of estates, risk managers, again, anyone who touches trusts or estates, for example, and help guide them on how to work, how to show up in a way that helps to shift the relationship dynamics of the families that they see, having conflict that could cost not just wealth, right, or their health, but also their relationships.
Yeah. So it's preempting. It's almost like a crisis communication strategy. I used to work in my PR days, actually, when I ran my PR agency, we quite often put together potential crises that could happen in an organization. And you're essentially doing that with conflict. What are potential areas of conflict?
Right. Exactly. And interesting you say that, because most often people come to me because of a crisis or because it's gotten so much, it's so blown up that it's started to cost, either legally because there's a lawsuit or someone's getting sick, literally, or there's an elderly person perhaps in the situation that's stressed by this and they're worried about their longevity. I often say this, I just wish there was a requirement before people get married, marry, start a business, write your estate plan, whatever, to get this kind of training and awareness or learn these skills, because the legal and financial decisions you make around your life, from a place where things aren't completely settled, or you're doing it on paper, but when a life event happens, that's when all the emotions blow up, because nobody was really bought into this emotionally. Whether it's a marriage, or something happened in a marriage where you weren't prepared for something, and or you didn't realize that all the time you were contributing to whatever just blew up in the marriage, which you think is somebody else's fault. There's so many things that can happen, that if only we had a greater awareness of our own inner conflict, and be able to clear that, as well as know how to connect and communicate on a different level, so much loss could be prevented.
And also, just to add to that, like having the confidence and to share. So say, for instance, you're entering into a new relationship. You're scared to say what you want in a relationship. Do you want to cohabit? Do you want to get married? Do you want to have kids? Would one of you move? And then a year down the line, you're having a conflict about something that should have been ironed out in the early days to make sure you're on the same page. So I guess it's not only being understanding what you find triggering, and knowing how to deal with conflicts, but understanding, in a relationship specifically, are your values and visions aligned in the first place?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that is so important. Yeah, yes, absolutely. My first marriage of 5 years, no children, ended because, I'll be honest, I always said I was on the same page with my partner, with my husband, but when it came time to start a family, a lot of things really started to show up in conflict with each other. And my plan to stay in my corporate role and, progress as an executive and all of that was not in alignment with his plan for me to be a stay-at-home mom. Both well-intended, and it ended amicably. It's always painful, but we never had common ground. And my second marriage had common ground in so many ways. But how you show up in a relationship time and time again over the years, you may not realize, I used to think it was always somebody else's fault. Sorry, this is what we do, right? It's like, but it was codependence. I'm just doing all these things. Why don't they understand? When I got to that fork in the road and realized what was happening, I became aware that I had been contributing to my own misery for so long, and I just didn't know it. Had I known then what I know now, things may have turned out very differently. But I don't regret, no regrets, because I wouldn't be here helping people, and my life was so much changed for the better as a result, and the effect of my daughters and all that. But still, and by the way, their dad and I get along great. We have because of this new awareness, right? We take holidays together. He's from the north of England, from Sheffield, and he lives all over the world. And we still travel and with our girls and family, and actually visited the house we lost in the divorce, the dream house in the mountains of New Mexico in the States, this past April, a year ago. And there was no shed of tear. There was no, oh, this is so sad. I knew the owners, and we all wanted to go see it. And so we just remembered the good times. And that's post-divorce. That's what you hope can happen, right?
And you learn from your experiences. You learn how you show up. You learn how you should or shouldn't have communicated. Happened to me as well. My last relationship, the last relationship I had, I'm now in a lovely, amazing relationship with my current partner, but the relationship before ended because I wasn't upfront enough that I wanted to have a child one day. And when I met him, there was this assumption thing going on, and he was like, yeah, think about it. Yeah. I mean, I've already got 2 boys, but I'm open to it. And he was kind of on the fence, and then he wasn't on the fence. A year in, he was like, no, I definitely don't want to have a child. I was like, oh, oh, I just literally wasted a year of my life. But I take responsibility for that, because I was not upfront enough saying this is a non-comparable thing for me in a relationship that I want to be a mother one day. So I learned the hard way of not communicating my needs and values and being a peacekeeper and wanting this relationship. But, with my partner, when we first met, I was just ripped the plaster off. I was like, this is who I am. This is my values, my morals. I want to be a mother one day and all these other things. And it's just like, well, we're in our 40s. Just let's lay it out on the table. So, yeah.
Excellent. No, that's great. And, you reminded me just to also add that we're talking about what we can do for ourselves and how we can change within ourselves. And, even if everyone else does their own emotional work, right? But please, this is not about, it's all up to us. What I mean that is, it's like, we're not the only ones who are contributing to perhaps a dysfunctional relationship or whatever causes something to blow up in the end, right? This is not to say to all the women out there, it's up to us. The guys don't have to, our partner, whoever that other partner is, they're not responsible for themselves. I don't mean that at all. But what I do mean is we can't control what they do. We can't control anybody in our lives, in the relationships we have what they think or say or do. And so it is up to us to be responsible to ourselves. And when we are upfront and we feel like we're approaching it in the best possible way to get alignment, and that alignment is still not there, then if that relationship is therefore meant to end for that reason, like what you just described, right? That's okay, because if you've come at it that way, it's easier to detach, even it can be sad. You may need to go through some mourning, some grieving, perhaps, of what was to be, but, or what's no longer going to, all the plans you'd made, right? And what no longer is to have or happen. But, but that grieving won't last as long, probably, because you're doing it for all those whys and needs that you hold dear. And you will find that person, that alignment like you have for yourself. That's wonderful, that it puts you in a new place in the next relationship. That's why I say settlement and mediation or divorces and business breakups. If you don't clear all the stuff that you walk away with that resentment, don't clear that stuff, that goes into the next relationship, business or personal. And then you wonder, why does the same thing keep happening to me? Because you haven't adapted or you haven't discovered something that you might need to do differently, Again, not good or bad, right or wrong. It's just discovery. We're all life learners at the end of the day. So.
Well, Dana, it's been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait for everyone to listen to this episode. There's so much helpful knowledge and tips on how to navigate conflict in a healthier and more productive way. So thank you so much for joining us on PS I Love Me.
Thank you, Lynda. And I want to say how much I've absolutely enjoyed this. When we set out to do this, I know that it's there's some plan to the idea of what we're going to talk about, but it's very organic at the same time. And I just to acknowledge you for being such a great host and guide and how the conversation's going. It's really felt very connected, and I appreciate you for that.
That's it for today's episode of PS I Love Me. I hope you've learned some interesting nuggets to weave into your everyday life to feel a little lighter, brighter, and inspired. If you loved today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more high-achieving women like yourselves to find us. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Lynda Williams Coach, for more daily inspiration and updates.